I have 365 hours a year more than you do.
Oh, where are you from? And it was right when the war started, and I said Russia, and she never spoke to me again.
It's okay to raise your voice, and then you do that at school and you get in trouble for it.
We don't really compliment each other either. We're just like, we give the looks.
There's no really talking behind your back, I feel like, in Ukraine.
Well, have you lost any connections with Russian people because of the war? I'm here in the studio with Pavel Bosovik. Is it Bosovik or Bosovik?
Bosovik.
Bosovik.
Yep.
Okay. And you are from Ukraine.
Correct.
Welcome to the show, and thank you for visiting me today.
Hey, thank you for having me.
You know, I'm a little starstruck right now because you are one of the most successful immigrant business owners here locally, and that is the most inspiring thing to me ever.
I appreciate that. Thank you. I feel like I'm the smallest, but now that you mention it, it's probably true.
No, I read a lot about your business. Also, you do podcasting, so you are my competitor. We're going to talk a lot about that also.
Plenty of listeners for everybody.
So before we learn about your American dream, how you became such a successful business owner and your podcast, let's start with your background.
Yes.
So where in Ukraine exactly are you from?
So I'm originally from Chernivtsi, Ukraine. It's in the Chernivtsi Oblast next to Romania, about 40 kilometers from Romania.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. And you also mentioned that you grew up in a multicultural family.
Yes. So my mom and her roots are from Romania. My dad and his roots from his mom's side is Russia, Siberia. And so when people ask me what I am, I'm like, I'm a Ukrainian, Romanian, Siberian, Russian.
I'm from Siberia too.
Really? Yeah,
Which part of Siberia?
I'll have to ask her. I can't remember. But yeah, my grandma's from Siberia.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Wow. Now I'm even more excited about this interview and starstruck.
Yeah.
So let's talk about your first experience. And why did you decide to move to the U.S., first of all?
So whenever my parents first got the opportunity to immigrate here, it was the fall of the Union, and there's still religious persecutions going on. My great-grandfather was held in prison for 16 years of his life for his faith. And so whenever my grandpa and then my dad, they were still really getting pressured, and there wasn't those same opportunities that we had here. And so my parents wanted, I'm from a family of 11 siblings. And so they wanted us to have the opportunities, the American dream. And so they immigrated to Portland, Oregon originally. We were there for a couple of years, and a pastor friend of mine told my dad that Missouri is the promised land. So here we are.
So you were how old when you moved here?
I was about 4 years old when we moved here.
4 years old with all of your 11 siblings?
Yes.
That's a giant family to move.
Oh, yeah.
How challenging was that?
Oh, it was. I've only saw like a couple of video clips. I was about 4 years old, so I don't remember a lot. But hearing my mom's stories, like she had one baby in one arm, another baby in another arm, and kids crying. And
wow.
and then they don't speak English, so that was a whole journey of its own. Today, there's like translators and stuff. Back then, there was nothing.
Absolutely. So do you remember anything about your first experiences in America?
So my first kind of memory started probably in the 3rd grade, when I started going to school and I realized how structured everything is, how clean everything is. There's like the bathrooms especially were so clean, and everything was so, it felt like I was in a movie, honestly.
And you went to school in Oregon.
Yes.
Correct. Yes. So what cultural differences maybe stood out to you the most as a child at that point?
So the thing that stood out to me the most was probably the communication. Like, talking here is completely different. So I did up until 5th grade, I was in Portland, and then I started 5th grade here at Hickory Hills. Then I went to Glendale. Shout out to Glendale. Then I went to Mizzou for college. And so the thing that was the most kind of cultural difference for me, and probably the hardest thing to acclimate to or be able to kind of adjust and fit in, is the talking. And so talking here, from the jokes to the way we compliment and the way we correct people, it's all like please and thank you, and like very structured and very professional. You know, from a Ukrainian kind of Russian background, we're very blunt. Yeah, we're blunt. Our jokes are
We don't really
harsh.
compliment each other either. We're just like, we give the looks. We're like,
yeah.
That means I like your shirt.
Yes, or you're dressed well. And so it was really hard. I remember it was probably through the 5th grade, a little bit of 6th grade, I couldn't adjust, and I was constantly being sent to ISS for some of the jokes I would say, or just being too blunt. And then finally, like 7th grade, I feel like, okay, I need to like really change. And it was hard because at home, everything was like Ukrainian, And so very blunt, very straightforward. It's okay to raise your voice. And then you do that at school and you get in trouble for it.
Yes.
And so I think around the 7th grade, I learned to have kind of like a dual personality. And so by the time I finished high school, I was like the most American kid ever at school. And then I'd come home and like fluent Russian, Ukrainian, most Russian, Ukrainian kid you can think of.
How did you maintain that? Like
it was
you being
hard.
so young, you
Yeah,
know, you
it
probably
was-
want to go outside and have fun and play with, you know, other children and play
I
football.
did that, but like around my Ukrainian friends and Russian friends and kids, I was very Ukrainian Russian, and then around my American friends, I was very American, and so it was hard. It was very stressful. I remember like not liking myself for it, and so finally freshman year of college, I moved out, and so I had my own apartment, and I'm like, all right, I got to do something about this, and so I created my own culture. I took what I liked about the American culture. I took what I like about my roots, and I mixed them together. I made my own culture. And it was extraordinary because Mizzou had, you know, so many different cultures there that people really started accepting me for who I am. And to this day, I think that's why people like the governor or senators and just simple business owners and clients remember me, is because I'm like unlike anyone else. And if I can kind of give advice to anyone else, is like, don't try to fit into one particular culture, but create your own.
So what about your family? How did they adapt to this different culture? Because your parents, how old were they when they moved here?
Oh, that's a good question. So my dad is about to turn 70, and this would have been 26 years ago. So he was probably in his 40s.
Yes.
I don't think my parents have adjusted yet. Like my dad is still super, I call it the Union, Soviet Union. And so still very, very Ukrainian, Russian roots. And so I don't think he's changed. I asked him one time, like, Dad, why haven't you become more Americanized? He's like, oh, it's because I want you children to remember where you came from. And then my mom, I mean, she was in her 40s as well. I never really asked her, but now that we talk about it, I'll have to ask her.
What about your brothers and sisters?
Oh, they all changed. They all, one by one. I think I'm one of the only ones that still is like if you talk to me, you can tell I'm from Ukraine or from Russia. Most of them have been very, very Americanized.
So can you share with me any significant challenges that your family faced moving here?
Oh, a lot of them. So first and foremost would be pushback from friends and family. My parents were very tied into the community. My dad supported a lot of families, had a really big and successful business in Ukraine. And so that was hard. A lot of them were like telling them, what do you think you're doing? And, you know, you have so much success here. Why would you leave everything to start over? They literally moved here with 2 bags of clothing. They didn't even have suitcases at the time. And so I think the first challenge was moving here. And then when they did move here, you know, they go into like an apartment for rent. They get donated some old car, Toyota Previa. They don't even make those anymore. And then like hand me down clothes, hand me down toys, the welfare, food stamps. And so just literally starting like an immigrant from nothing. And so not only do you have the kind of the pressure from the people you're leaving behind, but you come here and there's really nobody to support you. And so it's like probably the most stress any family, let alone a family of 11 children could have endured. But like Warren Buffett always says, you know, one of the best things that can happen to someone is be born or raised in poverty. And I think that was fundamental for my success today.
Absolutely. Have they ever thought about going back?
Oh, yes. I go back every year for about a month. And then my dad goes back every couple of years. And then my mom has been back, I think, 3 or 4 times as well.
But they never thought about going back there and living there.
Oh, no way.
They have no regrets.
Yeah. And it was before the war, too. You know, I don't want to make it sound like because of the war. Even before the war started, you know, we had that conversation. And my parents would always say, for the cultural aspects of society in Ukraine, they would move back. For the churches there, you know, the churches there are very different from the churches here. They would move back. But because of the politics and how limited you are on pursuing a dream like the American dream, they would never go back.
Okay, so this might be a little bit of a controversial comparison question, but I still want to ask you, do you like how churches look in Ukraine better than here in America? Just like the visual perspective of it.
Oh, visually, yes. They're very like almost like Orthodox like. They look like churches.
Yes.
Which I still like the American churches. Some of the newer buildings now, they look like they're, straight out of an architectural magazine. But it looks more like a business and not a church.
Exactly.
And I don't know, maybe I'm just old school that way, but I really like when a church looks like a church and you can go outside and you can take a picture and it actually looks like a chapel.
With the golden, what is it called? Golden cone?
I don't even remember what it's called.
With the cross on top.
Yeah.
This is the churches I miss too. And you know what? I wanted to build a church here.
Hey, I'm sure you could. It's America.
I feel like we need to find someone who can build us a Orthodox, Ukrainian,
church,
Russian, for Slavic people church.
Multicultural Slavic church. Yeah.
Slavic church here in Springfield. Let's sign a petition.
Yeah, I don't know if that would happen, but I think if you built one like a venue, there's this awesome couple in St. Louis. They bought an old chapel and they restored the interior for like wedding venues and birthdays and stuff. And the exterior, I mean, it's like as chapel as it gets. And it's super cool. I think if I ever host like an anniversary or something, I'd do it there.
Awesome. I never knew about that.
Yeah.
I need to Google that. I'm actually curious what it looks like now. So you mentioned a little bit about your childhood and that it was super different for you to go home and talk in Ukrainian language and Russian language and how you were, blunt and straightforward. And then in school, you were getting in trouble for that.
Yeah.
So how did you find support in the community? And when did that happen? When did you started making, I guess, friends, American friends here locally?
So I was very social from a young age. And so as far as back as I can remember from, kindergarten, 3rd grade, 5th grade, I always had a lot of friends, but my friends were troublemakers because those are the only ones I could really connect with.
Of course.
Because I just, like we talked about, it's the jokes, it's the way you talk, it's the way you behave. You don't see too many, I would say average or middle class. Oh, how do I word this politically correct? You don't see too many American children like climbing trees and breaking windows.
No.
And like just being kids. And so naturally, the kids that I would associate myself with were the troublemakers. So I think when I finally made my first like real good like middle class American friend that we, instead of going to do something like skip class, we would go to like a business competition or go to a conference or go to an American church service would probably definitely be, I want to say probably freshman year of high school.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So speaking of American people, has anyone said anything to you that was just not true about your culture? Speaking of stereotypes,
Yes, all the time. Up until the war started, people didn't really know what Ukraine was. And so, honestly, I just told people it was, Russia. And so I always got told like, oh, are you from the mafia? Are you?
Do you drink vodka all the time? Do you ever get cold during the winter? Same.
Yes, all of those.
Yes.
And that followed me honestly through up until the war started. And then when the war started and Ukraine really became on the map, people started realizing and recognizing Ukraine for what it is. And then at that point, it was even better because now Ukraine is like the greatest country in the world. And people were really like sympathetic towards me. And it was a pretty amazing transition.
So is there any new stereotypes that people tell you now?
About Ukraine, yeah. So one, it was funny. One guy's like, Pavel, I think I know why you're successful. I'm like, why? He's like, well, if the Ukrainians are holding back the Russians with John Deere tractors, then I can't even imagine what you can do in America. And I'm like, okay. You might have to cut that clip.
I'm saving it.
Hey, if you don't mind a little bit of controversial conversations on here, then definitely save it.
We love controversy.
Yeah.
So speaking of your Ukrainian heritage, how do you maintain your connection to your roots and your traditions? And I also did a little bit of stalking on your page, and I know that you have a child or children.
Yeah, so we foster children. We haven't had any children of our own. We've fostered now 11 children in the last 5 years.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
The way I've been able to stay tied in, I'd probably say parents. Because the church I attend right now is very Americanized, if I can say. But my parents and my wife's parents, super Ukrainian, super Russian. My wife's dad kind of has Russian origins, versus my mom-in-law is like very Ukrainian. And so they don't speak hardly any English. So there's no forgetting the language because you want to communicate with them. You got to speak their language.
Yes.
The food, I can't remember any set, like whether my parents or my in-laws ever making any American food. It's always, you got your plov and your borscht.
Of course. You can't live without those things.
Your dumplings.
Soup. Salad.
Yes,
Yes, Olivier.
all of that. Yeah, that's like a norm. Like it's not like once for Easter type of thing. That's a norm.
Yes.
And so you got the food, the language, and then kind of like the aspect of culture, like the way you communicate and the way you dress and all of that. You know, we spend, I would say, at least one day a week, we take turns, you know, visiting them. And so that really helps us stay rooted in our culture.
What are some traditions that you still follow in your family?
I think, sometimes food. So we still cook the food sometimes, but I think traditions is more
Christmas.
You make me sound very American now.
Do you celebrate Christmas on a different date, like January 7th?
So that's a good one. So we do celebrate the first Christmas and the second Christmas. I think it's like January 7th. So
yes,
that's
the
a good
Orthodox
example.
Christmas.
Yes. And then what are some other ones? Ooh, that's a good question.
New Year's. New Year's is being celebrated a lot in Slavic countries. You know, it's a big deal. It's bigger deal than Christmas for people. That's when you exchange
gifts. So New Year's,
gifts.
we stay all night. We do gifts. It's like a big thing in our churches.
Yes.
I think churches is a big thing too. Like even though our churches are kind of like Americanized and it's held like the American way, we still have sermons in Russian, sermons in Ukrainian with a lot of like Slavic examples. So you don't have the whole modern day examples, a lot of Slavic examples. So I think a combination between our faith and our food is probably the most, and holidays probably the most Ukrainian Russian thing we do.
So you shared with me your life in Ukraine and how you moved here. Let's move on to your life here now.
Okay.
I know that you're a business owner. Share a little bit about that.
Oh, I could go on for hours. Do we have 4 more hours that we could talk?
Yes, absolutely. Let's do it.
So business has been extraordinary. I currently oversee and have 7 different businesses, a podcast, writing a book.
Wait,
and
7? I thought you own one, which is
so
27 North, correct?
Yes, 27 North has 4 subsidiaries within itself. And so 27 North within itself is 4 businesses. We have 27 North, the vans. We have 27 North trucks, where we build super cool expedition trucks. We have 27 North boats, where we do like really cool expedition style, like military like boats. And then we have 27 North RV. That's our user experience. So our dealers sell the vans to the clients. And then our clients are able to come back to us to do our off-road course, off-road training. They can get service work done. So if they want to upgrade their cabinet or remove the bench and install a bed, we can do that for them. So that's probably my currently most successful business endeavor. I started that in my mother's garage about 5 years ago. And
in your mother's garage. I was going to say, where did that idea came from? And explain a little bit about what exactly your business is doing. Like from the videos I saw on the internet, it's you take a car and you build the inside of it in a cool way. That's how I explain it, but I don't know what I'm talking about. So
you're very close. So I started it all. I would say it'd probably have to be like the origin of the story, I'd have to start senior year of college. I was at Mizzou, and I was one of the few Ukrainian students there. And there was one Ukrainian professor who, in one of his faculty meetings, he was told, hey, by another professor, I have a Ukrainian student in my class. So he comes, tracks me down, talks to me, and he's like, Pavel, at the end of the conversation, like, you have to promise me that you won't go into trucking and you won't go into construction, because that's a lot of what Slavic people go into.
Yes.
I'm like, yeah,
and
I
truck
promise.
driving too.
Yes. So that's, and so he's like, you can't go in any of those industries. I'm like, all right, I promise you I won't do that. He's like, you got to do something different. Fast forward 2 years later, I'm in construction building houses, thinking about going and being a truck driver.
So doing everything the opposite of what he said.
Everything the opposite of what I promised him I wouldn't do. And so I was working 7 days a week, and then I just sat down one Sunday night and I'm like, I made a promise to my professor that I wouldn't do this. I'm not happy doing it. I want to do something different. And that's where the idea came. Why don't I go into the RV world? There's no Ukrainians. At that time, there's no Ukrainians, no Russians in it. And so we went into it. We sold our house, sold my wife's car, and moved in with her parents for almost a year. And out of my mom's garage, started servicing and rebuilding RVs. And it just took off. The pandemic made us grow 800%. This year, we're on track to do about 50 million in sales, and we're approaching, I think, 60-ish employees. And so we've just had tremendous growth. And I look back now and I'm like, man, I really want to track down the professor. So professor, if you're listening to this, reach out to me. I'd love to talk to you and tell you how I did it.
Wow. See, stories like that just always inspire me so much. I mean, how can you not? A person moved here without any connections here locally. You completely started all from scratch. Well, you were 4 years old also. Yeah. But your parents and family had no connections here, no help at all. And you just raised step by step. You climbed that ladder to become this successful. And you also have a podcast.
Yes. And we also have a podcast. So as this business is excelling, people are asking me, what are you doing? How are you doing it? And I said, well, we build super RVs. So for over 100 years, RVs have been built very low quality, very cheap. And it's been so bad that people today call them cardboard boxes on wheels. And so whenever I was servicing these, I got firsthand experience of how bad it is. And I'm like, why don't I build a real RV? And so I went and I sourced a lot of materials from like the marine boating industry, the aerospace airplane industry. And I sourced a lot of those materials, build concepts, and I built a really cool RV. And I posted it on Instagram and Facebook, and it felt like it went viral. Van life started really growing at that time. And within our first year, we built over 40 of them. I'm like, wow, I really got something here. And so I felt stuck. So I started reaching out to people in the community. I started reaching out to folks like Doug Pitt and Jack Stack and just manufacturing business gurus here in Springfield. And they started mentoring me and giving me tips and advice. And I know my growth went like 100x. Like it exploded. And people kept asking me, how are you learning all this? I remember talking to one young man, and he was a senior in college, and I gave him just like an inspirational talk. He's like, Pavel, you sound like you're 100 years old and you've lived 2 lifetimes. He's like, where are you getting all this from? And like my mentors, like I listen to older people and I absorb. He's like, well, can you share with me what they teach you? And then the idea came, well, if he's asking, other people, are going to want to know. And so I'm like, I'm going to start a podcast. And the podcast I wasn't expecting it to take off. I wasn't expecting to get, like 20, 30,000 views a week sometimes, most times. And then I'm like, okay, I gotta do more. And so I went through and I interviewed everyone that has either directly or indirectly inspired me. And now I'm seeing its effect on other people. And it's, I think, the most fulfilling thing I've done.
And what is it called?
It's Suits and Shoes.
Suits and Shoes. Okay, check it out. I don't know how many of my listeners will go and check it out.
Well, I've recorded 7 episodes now. I've live streamed, I think, 5. I always try to be about 2 ahead. And I'm like, I need to get more women on my podcast. And so I reached out to a couple of senators and former senators. And so I'm pretty excited that we're going to have women business owners and politicians that we're going to start interviewing as well. And so I think it's very relatable because whether you're first generation or second generation, it's not that easy to start a business, to fit in the culture. Just the way of doing business here is so different. And I'd say half of my listeners, if not more, are from first generation immigrants here in the US. Very, very cultural shock to them. And in order to adjust and be able to do business here, you need to know how to do it.
Absolutely. And so I completely missed out on the fact of your education.
Yeah.
You're telling about building all these, cool cars and, programming all of that. And I'm like, what did he went to school for?
So I went to school for business administration.
Okay.
And then that was, so when I started year 1, I did international business.
Okay.
And I'm 2 semesters in and I'm like, I could teach these courses better than the professors. They're teaching me, like, I took a class in Ukrainian culture. I took a class in Russian culture. I took a class in Latino. And like, I grew up with Latinos and Russians and Mexicans. Like, I know all this. And the professor's like trying to teach me this. I'm like, I can teach this better. Like, I'm the cultural
I already
guy.
know everything.
Yeah. So then I met with my advisor and she's like, wow, Pavel, I didn't know you were Ukrainian. I would have told you not to go into it. She's like, this is more for American kids that want to go, multicultural. And so she told me, like, what do you want to do? And I'm like, well, I like marketing, I like accounting, I like finance, I like economics, I like management. She's like, you need to do business administration. She's like, it encompasses everything. And indeed it did. So business administration is amazing. I recommend this for everyone who doesn't know what aspect of business they want because you take classes and courses in everything. So I know enough about every subject to kind of get my way through it. And that really helps me because whenever I hire an accounting firm, I know financials, I know accounting, and so I can hold them accountable. I'm not an expert of it, but I know enough to hold them accountable for it.
Wow, you're just an American, or actually you're a Ukrainian Mr. Beast.
Thank you.
I'm convinced.
I appreciate it. I do love giving away cars. So I've given away like 5 cars now. I bought my mom a car. I'm working on getting my dad and brother a car. And then something cool we're working on for next year. So 27 North, whenever we celebrate our 4th year anniversary, we're thinking we got to do something bigger than before. And so a cool project we're working on is giving away 27 cars. And I love doing stuff like that because it's when I started my business, I made a promise to take care of my people and take care of my clients. And I stand by that. And I love doing that for my employees and people around me, not just because, you know, it's nice to get the recognition for it and, you know, your accounts go viral, but just that feeling you have, it's priceless.
And I'm standing by that. You are Ukrainian Mr. Beast.
Thank you.
So let's talk a little bit about American Dream now.
Okay.
What is that concept to you? You know, this is what this podcast is about, American Dream. And I always like to ask my guests, what do they think about that concept? Are you living your American dream? Do you have an American dream? Do you believe in it?
Yes, 100%. People call me the American Dream so much. I thought about writing a book
about American Dream.
Because my first one is called What It Takes, the 7 Pillars of Success. It launches this fall. And so, yes, I would say I define the American Dream. And I think the thing that I would highlight the most for entrepreneurs, especially first generation here in the US, is to understand what the dream is. It's not to have a Lamborghini. It's not to have a Ferrari or a mansion. That's not the American dream. The American dream is first and foremost to have friends, to have friends in a social circle that you enjoy, that you can go and have a barbecue with Saturday night at the lake, that you can go and enjoy church service with on Sunday morning. That is first, you know, having just an amazing social circle that lacks a lot around the world. And so I would start with that. You know, if you can achieve that in the United States of America, you're already in part living the American dream. I start with that. The next step to it would be having food, refrigerator, washer, dryer. If you can get all those on your app and control your, you know, have a smart home. It doesn't have to be a mansion, you know, a single bedroom home where you have a smart thermostat. Is that not the American dream? Like, name me another country today where a majority of the population can go and have a smart home in their home, where they can say, hey, Alexa, turn up the temperature, or sit down in their car and dial the temperature, the radio, and like have a massage chair and all these things. So if you can have all these amenities on top of having an amazing social circle, that is the American dream. I think today, influencers have kind of over exaggerated it to where if you don't have a yacht, an airplane, a pool, and a mansion, and, you know, 20 girls and 30 guy friends, then you're not living. And that's a lie. That's a deception. I think if a lot of people were just to reassess their lives, they're already living that American dream. And so for me, I think I got the American dream senior year of college when I had an apartment with an AC unit in the window. And it was in the summer, you know, 100 degrees in my apartment. But I had a washer, a dryer, a microwave, a cooktop, a sink, running water, food. You know, I had an awesome university, an awesome college, an awesome wife, cool friends. I really didn't need anything. And I think looking back sometimes, I think I was more happier then than now when I have, you know, the stress of 7 different businesses on my shoulders. And so if I could tell the listeners anything, honestly, if you can come here, get a nice job and get the amenities of the American culture, you're in the dream. Anything above that, I think is already like just like a plus and a bonus to what you already have.
You should write a book about this. Thank you. You know, I was just listening to you and I was imagining and visualizing everything you were saying. And I was like, you're right. This is what American Dream is. This is what a lot of movies show too. Honestly, they show, you know, both sides, the Angelina Jolie side and Brad Pitt, you know, the luxurious sides. And they show just like a normal people life here in America too, from like Disney movies and stuff like that.
I always tell people, like, you don't need to have everything that I have. You don't need to be the next Elon Musk, the next Warren Buffett. I'm genuinely serious when I say I think I was more happier senior year of college, little to no worries. I had all the amenities that you can have here in the States versus today. Yeah, I have a masseuse, a dry cleaner. I have a maintenance guy. I have a driver who can drive me when I want. I mean, I have so many things. I have a personal assistant. I have an executive assistant. My emails are answered for me. My phone calls are taken care of for me. My texts, my contracts, multiple lawyers, multiple accountants. Like I sometimes sit and I'm like, wow, I'm not a billionaire, but I kind of feel like a billionaire. I kind of feel
you
like
live the lifestyle of the billionaire.
I have a personal doctor that checks in on me. I have a personal chiropractor that checks up on me, and then I have a trainer. I have a dietitian. Like I have all these super cool things. But at the end of the day, it's not about how much you have outside physical things. It's how much in here. You know, happiness you can't buy. Peace you can't buy. You can go work all you want, but it's not going to increase or decrease your happiness, your peace, your joy, your love for the people around you. And so if I can say anything, you got to enjoy the process through all of it. Because if you lose sight of those priceless things you have early on, a lot of times people never get them back and they live the rest of their lives very sad. I've met a lot of very successful and wealthy people that are probably some of the most unhappy people I've ever met.
Because money can't buy happiness.
Exactly. They lose it along the process.
Absolutely. So what advice would you offer to fellow immigrants from Ukraine in pursuing their American dream here?
Yeah. Oh, that's a loaded question. It's another 4-hour conversation. We'll have to do a part 2 sometime.
Absolutely.
I would say be humble. You know, a lot of times, unfortunately, not only Ukrainians, I see it with Latinos coming from Mexico. I see it with Russians coming from Russia. You know, we employ, and I've worked with pretty much every main culture there is around the world. And the main mistake people come here is degrading the American people by thinking they can do it better because they have a harder work strength or desire, grit. And it's in America, it's not working harder that makes you successful. It's being smarter. And so don't come over here and think because your hands can go and, you know, dig a trench for 16 hours that you can go and outwork. That's not how it works. And so first thing you need to do is find really strong and good American friends and learn the American culture. I'm not saying become American or Americanized. You can hold on to your values. But the moment in my life that I was able to create my own culture, a combination of mostly Ukrainian, a little bit of Russian, a little bit of Romanian, a little bit of Latino because of my Latino friends, with the American culture is when I became successful. Not when I started a business, not when I got my first multi-million-dollar loan from the bank, not any of those things. But when I was able to adapt to the culture and just be confident and bold in that, that's when I became successful.
And looking ahead on your personal journey here in the US, what some of your plans in pursuing your American dream?
Yeah, so I am just getting started on my journey. And so I have a 20-year plan that I'm working at. That's
20. So your life planned out for 20 years?
Yeah. Well, like big picture.
Oh, okay. Not like in the planner already for the next 20 years.
So year by year, yes. So every year I set myself a goal. This is something that comes from mentors. So I was, that's another, I think, fault of a lot of immigrants is they're in survival mode year by year. And we overestimate what we can get accomplished in a year. But we really, really like drastically underestimate what we can get accomplished in 20 years. And so I hired once, he was a former Marine. He ran a city, had his MBA, like very well decorated, like, you know, the perfect father figure anyone would dream about. And I asked him, you know, can you help me structure my life? And the first thing he did, he went, got, you know, analyzed my entire life, and then came back 2 weeks later with this like really thick, probably like 50-page proposal. And the cover page had 20-year chart on it, and every year goals. Financial goals, like what financial goals I have to reach, like gross revenue across all my businesses, and then personal goals for both for my family and my business. And it was just extraordinary to me that, you know, every year. So last year, you know, my goal was market penetration, this much revenue. We accomplished that and surpassed it. This year, he wrote out for us, focus on policies and procedures. So this year, I'm working on policies and procedures. So my whole life is policy and procedure. Like, for example, anytime I do a podcast, I have a procedure for my team that they have to follow. And so I require a flat white coffee. It's a European latte. I require a filtered bottle of water. I require, and then I do like a hairbrush, hairspray. Like I have an entire procedure.
I don't.
I
don't have any people to do that. I offered you a filtered water that we have here at the station and a cup, plastic cup.
So this year I'm building those procedures because as you continue to grow, whenever you have, so let's say for year 10 for me, year 10 is probably like the peak for me. It's like so much going on that you don't have time to really allocate any brain power to finding out. Like imagine if you had to go and buy everything you need for a podcast. That would take hours of your time. Or if you had to explain it to someone new. And now I have a phenomenal executive assistant who has a procedure typed out of not only where, but what and what sizes. So I'm really picky. So I don't like big hairsprays and big wipes. I like the little travel packs. And so I have travel packs pre-built for me whenever I travel, whenever I go on podcasts. And so it seems kind of tedious right now, but whether you're going to be super successful in business and politics or even a family, like if you want to grow a family, it's very common for cultural families to have, 4, 5, 7, 10 children. You have to automate aspects of your life. And so every year he set me different goals and different revenue streams, and it grows exponentially. But the thing is, until you have that streamlined, you can't really take the next step. A good example that I'll share with you, I have an online training course. And so I train people anywhere, one of the biggest individuals that I mentor, he makes over $1 billion in revenue a year, all the way to, college, high school students that haven't even started their endeavors. And a lot of times people that are below that line, they don't understand that. They're like, why would you spend time and money on that? Well, I say, let's say you spend an hour a day on your personal self, multiply that by a year. It's 365 hours.
Yes.
365 hours. You could launch another podcast. People are like, Paul, how do you have time for that? Well, I don't waste time on my coffee and my hairspray and my bottles and my appointments and everything else.
Yeah.
And so I have 365 hours a year more than you do. So I can go and I can start another business venture.
Finally, what has been your proudest moment in your journey so far?
I think my proudest moment is keeping my parents proud. And a lot of people, they lose sight of, what really matters most in life. And I once heard a motivational speech of a man who did it and became world famous here from the States. And he was somewhere overseas, and he got a phone call that his mom has passed away. And he flew back into the States, and he was just sharing that emotional moment where he was crying about how he pushed his parents out of his life. And now he's here at the funeral, and he's just crying and saying he would give it all up just to spend one more day with his mother. And this was in high school when I watched this. And so, like I said, when I started my business, I made a promise to, take care of my people, which is employees and family. And so I'd say my proudest moment is keeping my parents proud. And that's two aspects. My parents always wanted me to be a strong, devout Christian. And glory be to God, I'm still, very devoted Christian. And second, they wanted me to be tied in with them and my siblings. It's not easy because I'm super busy, but thankfully through like technology and being able to carry a spreadsheet of all their birthdays and all their special events, I've been able to accomplish that.
Welcome back. You're listening to the American Dream Podcast. I'm here with the Ukrainian Mr. Beast, Pavel Bosovik.
I feel like that's going to stick.
Yes, yeah. Mr. Bosovik.
Yes.
Yes, Mr. Beast. So this half of the podcast is usually dedicated to us taking imaginary trips to the homeland of my guest, which in your case, you have a complicated story over here. It's Ukraine, Russia, Romania.
Yes.
So we're going to take a trip to Ukraine because you said that you travel there every year for a month.
Correct.
When was the last time you were
So
home?
last time we went was last March. And it was actually a really awesome experience because we got to visit the front lines. We were a kilometer from the actual front line.
Wow, that's so unique. I didn't even realize that you did that. Otherwise, I would have prepared different kind of questions over here. So before we dive into the cultural perspective of your home country, let's talk a little bit about your latest trip. How did you feel when you were visiting your home country and you witnessed
it was
everything?
kind of extraordinary because I got to experience both the toll that the war is having, and I still got to experience what Ukraine is home for me. And so we drove and entered from the Polish border. We took a bus to Lviv, and Lviv is like the center, the origin, the cultural roots of Ukraine. And you see women in very nice long dresses, and there's like a chocolate factory and cafes, and people are walking around and smiling, and it's like very vibrant, and it literally feels like home. Here you don't really have that, unfortunately. And so there, from the way people are dressed, talking, laughing, the cafes are huge. Like you come into a cafe and it's just a whole experience. You have the historic buildings. So there, it's not like here, glass sky buildings. That's, in Kiev we have, it looks like a New York City. But Lviv itself, a lot of historical buildings, a lot of historical sites, a lot of historical homes. And so just the whole vibe, the whole culture, like you can feel it in the atmosphere. It just feels like Ukraine, and in your heart, you're like, wow, this is home. I think, like I said earlier on in section 1, the only reason I'd move back is for that, not the business political, it's pretty much impossible to succeed in those realms, but just the culture and the people there are extraordinary. But then we loaded up and we went to the very front lines, and it was a completely different country, completely different vibe. We stayed the night in bunkers, and just firsthand talking to the soldiers, and it was sad because you had soldiers that are actually in communication with the Russian forces, and both sides are just exhausted. They're just tired of this war, and they say it's pointless. There's no reason for it. We firsthand heard testimonials from both sides that were like, hey, we're just ready for this to end. And it was really sad to see that, broken families, broken hearts, broken soldiers. And it really put in perspective. And upon returning back, I've become even more vocal about it. We need to support them in prayer. We need to support them in supplies. We need to support them just all together to bring an end to it. Not to win necessarily, but just to bring an end to it.
You mentioned the broken families, and my godmother is actually Ukrainian. I'm Russian. And when everything started, I remember that people were not like being aggressive towards me because I have nothing to do with the war. I've lived here for 10 years. But to me, it was just a different approach that people had towards me when I was like, I'm from Russia. And I remember for sure that there was a lady that I was sitting next to in like a movie theater or something, and she heard my accent and she said, oh, where are you from? And it was right when the war started. And I said, Russia. And she never spoke to me again after that. She just turned on, like not a single American person has ever done that to me.
That's interesting because I've not experienced that yet. And I would say probably 3/4 of my social circle is Ukrainian, and about a quarter is Russian. And I've only had a few instances like that, but in general, I think people are just tired of it and ready for it to come to an end.
Yes, absolutely. Have you lost any connections with Russian people because of the war? Because I have.
Yes, actually, I've lost a couple of good Russian friends, but the weird thing is I made new ones. So one of my good Russian friends right now, he's a professional Porsche race car driver in Russia. And so it's like, it's so hard because, before the war, we were all, very well connected, and essentially one man just created so much division. And my hope is that if post 9/11 we were able to mend bridges with the Middle East and the Middle Eastern people living here in the United States, that when this war comes to an end, it'll be a long road to recovery, but I want to be at the front of mending those relationships.
Absolutely. That's a beautiful goal. I love that.
I appreciate it.
So let's move on to the this half of the podcast that is dedicated to your home country before war started, or maybe during. It's up to you, whatever you want to share. What, in your opinion, makes Ukraine a attractive country for Americans to travel to?
I think it's all the Americans that I've talked to and that I've taken there over the years. I have a really good friend in Kiev that is from Springfield, Missouri, graduated from Evangel. His kids recently graduated from Evangel, and he's living there full time. And so talking to these people of what really like keeps them there is the culture. It's not so much the beautiful countryside or the soil that's so black that you can drop an apple and an apple tree will grow. It's not so much even, you know, the amazing, you know, the air and just all together. I think it's the people and the food, people and food. So Ukrainians are, in a sense, like while they may not be as open and blunt, they are very open. And so here, for example, you know, if I was to go visit Portland, even my Ukrainian American friends, they won't. It's not really like they won't go and say, "Hey, you can come stay at my home." You know, it's like, "Hey, here's a cool 5-star hotel." Yeah. There, like even random people we met, like, "Hey, you should stay at our house." No, you should stay at our house. Like they'll host you in their home. And to Americans, it's like it's a cultural shock. But the older Americans, they experienced that early on in their childhood because from what I'm told, it used to be like that here. And so I think that plays a big role. It's just how friendly, open, and genuine the people are there. Building on that, they're very open. So if they don't like you, they'll tell you they don't like you.
That's true. It goes both ways.
Yeah, so it goes both ways. And for them, they like it because they're not, you know, investing time or getting burned by a pointless relationship where they talk behind your back. There's no really talking behind your back, I feel like, in Ukraine. Like they'll come and they'll tell you, "Hey, I don't like you. You shouldn't do that." And so I think that plays a role too. And then to tie it all together, the food. It's unlike anywhere else in this world. And so I think that's a big...
What is the dish that every American should try in Ukraine when they go there?
That's all of them. I would say between, just because they're my personal favorite, borscht. It's a red beet soup. And then probably plov. But then you got olivier. It's like a potato salad.
Yes, potato with peas, which I made for a lot of American people here at the station. And only one person liked it.
Really? Interesting.
Because of the mayo.
Oh, yes.
They're not used to salads with mayo. See, we call them salads in our countries, and they're like, salads is greens, lettuce, you know, tomatoes, like cucumber,
you should
all
make
of that.
them red beet soup.
Yes, I think my mom made it for them too. And
maybe, I don't know. Everyone I've taken there in large part has chicken dumplings. That's a big one too.
Oh yes, those ones. Yes, those are a big hit for them.
Vareniki s vishнями, so that's like dumplings with wild cherries. That's a big...
They call them pierogis here.
Really?
Pierogis, yeah. And I was confused too because I was like, pierogis is like little pies, you know, that we make. Yeah. But they're like, no, pierogis is those long dumplings, kind of like Asian style dumplings.
Yes.
And that's what vareniki looks like. Yeah. Yes. So vareniki, borscht, and olivier, if you can. Yes. Perfect. So can you describe any attractions that everyone should look at if they're going to go to Ukraine?
Oh, there's so many. I would start probably with Odessa. There's a wonderful sea down there. So they actually have RVs there now and cabins. Because you can do this probably in the span of 4 weeks. And so I would start at the very southern part of Ukraine, do kind of Odessa, and then I'd go up through the Carpathian Mountains, the Karpaty. And
Karpaty.
Yeah.
It gives me like goosebumps every time we speak the language.
Yes, the Carpathian Mountains, one of the top mountain passes in all of Europe. And so if you want the real Ukrainian experience, you go there, because there they have these really cool lodge cabins. There's skiing resorts, there's snowboarding, all of that. And the waitresses, they dress in like traditional Ukrainian outfits,
like dresses. And
the dresses, the head things, the all the flowers and stuff. And you eat out of wooden bowls, like traditional Ukrainian food. Yeah. And so the bread is made in a brick oven, and they cook on the fire for you. And so you get like really bougie amenities like the hot tubs and the saunas, but then you go like back into history. After that, I would go probably through my hometown of Chernivtsi. You can't miss my hometown.
Of course.
There is called the Paris of Ukraine. And so there's literally one street. It's kind of like the Branson Landing.
Okay.
So it's one street with a lot of really cool cafes and restaurants, and there's like a sushi bar there. And for $100, you can feed 6 people and fill a table up with more sushi than you can eat. And the cool thing about the sushi there is they use real natural ingredients. So I call it Ukrainian sushi. Like literally tastes like Ukrainian food, but in a sushi roll. Then I would keep traveling up through Lviv. Lviv is like, I would say, the modern Ukraine tied with traditional Ukraine. And so like we talked about, all the historic sites. And then I would finish off in Kiev. And
Of
Kiev is like the
course.
Ukrainian
The
New York City.
capital.
Yeah, the capital. And so it's like the modern, like the Ukrainian New York City. Huge skyline, a lot of modern day cool things you can do there. Same with a lot of historic sites like the Kiev caves and things of that nature.
What is the best way of transportation around that trip for Americans?
Well, the currency rate's pretty good right now. You could hire a private driver.
Yeah.
Other than that, it's a lot of people still travel by train and buses. And so if you're just an average, tourist and you want to get the whole touristy experience, train and buses.
Would you recommend renting a car in Ukraine?
No, I would not. The roads.
And the drivers?
So the drivers, no. We always hire a private driver, the private car, and it's an amazing experience.
It's also very hard to get driver's license in Ukraine. It's a Slavic country. The symbols and everything is so different from
very
America.
different, yeah.
You will just struggle a lot, and you don't want that in your trip.
And then you get pulled over, and that's a whole nother
Oh,
experience.
yes, no. Maybe you should experience that then. That's the authentic
Yes.
Ukrainian experience.
Then you'll be able to say, I've been to Ukraine.
Yes, absolutely. So you mentioned a little bit about Ukrainian people. So can any immigrant, or not an immigrant, but like a traveler that is going to Ukraine just meet with a Ukrainian person and ask them to stay at their place?
I think it's hard because we're getting very Americanized. I would say, like, if I had to just throw an answer out there off the top of my head, yes. I think you could still do that today. You might get a no and a weird look, but I think in large part you still can, because we did it. We did it in Kiev. We literally found a random family and we just connected with them, and they would not let us go to a hotel. They won't let us get an Airbnb. Like, you have to stay with us. Like, okay.
You didn't think it was creepy?
No, because I still very Ukrainian.
Right.
If I flipped the switch and was American, I would have never done it. I mean, that would have been really
Absolutely.
weird. I wouldn't be able to be comfortable. I wouldn't be able to sleep. And so the Ukrainian roots allowed me to do that and enjoy that experience. It was like a cool experience. But definitely the American side of me would have never done it.
Absolutely. When is the good time of year to go to Ukraine? Is there any specific holidays that a tourist should, look into going?
Yeah, I would say spring or fall, because the summers are brutal. They're very hot and humid. The winters are like, if
Also
you think
brutal.
Missouri winter is bad, you haven't been to Ukraine. Like, cars freeze up. It's like it's really, really cold. And so unless you really enjoy, but even like if you enjoy ski resorts and stuff, in the fall there's already snow there. So yeah, fall or spring, I wouldn't go any time outside of that.
During what time is Maslenitsa? It's spring, right?
I think it's a spring, yeah.
Yeah.
That's our time. I love going like March, April, May. Those are my months. Like, I love going then.
See, that's what I would recommend people too, because that's when everything starts to bloom, and that's when Maslenitsa is too. So it's a very unique experience to see that. I don't know if they're still doing it, that giant wooden lady being burned down to the ground and you're eating crepes.
Eating crepes part, yes. I don't I don't know about the other part, if they still do it or not. I think the war really changed a lot.
Absolutely. So how has Ukrainian rich history influenced tourists to visit it?
It's really had a big impact because it's so unique. It's unlike any other. And I think what really helps countries attract tourism is being unique. And to this day, if you go to Lviv or Kiev or anywhere else, it's still very traditionally Ukrainian. I think if you go to like Canada or if you go to Europe, it's becoming very like globalization's having a big toll on culture around the world. And so I feel like you don't get that ultimate experience. And so like I remember traveling through London and through Canada, and I didn't really see a big difference. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I didn't spend enough time there. But when you come to Ukraine, it's still there. So if you go to Kiev and you go to the Kievan caves, you literally feel like you're in, 100 years back in Ukraine. And it's organic. It's natural.
What was the longest that you went without going home?
Almost 2 months. I love it there.
Without being there, I mean, like years.
Oh,
How many years?
Oh, so if we immigrated here in 99, the first time I went was 2014. So like 15 years.
15 years.
Yeah.
Wow. So the first time you were back home, tell me a little bit about that.
Oh, I felt like I traveled back in time 10 years. The phones,
I know.
yeah.
I felt the same way.
Yeah.
I only was in America for like 3 years maximum.
Yeah.
But I was like 16 and then I was 19. So that's a different, mental state of a person.
Especially through the teenage
Yes,
years.
yes. And so I went back and I thought that everyone was super rude.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that everyone was like brutally way too honest. And I was like, I don't like this. This is not the
No,
mentality.
I did not like my first time back
No,
either.
no. How was it?
It was weird. Like, I did not like it at all. Halfway through, I went with my dad my first time in 2015. And I told my dad, I'm ready to go home. It was so different. Everything seemed like kind of old and outdated. Because at that time, I was like, I was in between high school and college. I was very Americanized. And so I didn't value it. And so I'm not saying it to down talk it. I'm saying because I didn't value it. But then I came back here. I took some cultural classes. I saw the difference. I'm like, wow, I miss it. And so the second time I went back, like I said earlier, I came like, wow, this is home. It just felt like home.
That's good. I haven't been back ever since my first time. I don't know if I ever will. There's, nothing going on there that specially, but I don't know.
If you want to enjoy like just the culture and the historic kind of traditions, it's worth it. But if you're like, you're looking for a good time, and that's I think why countries like Amsterdam are so popular.
Yes, and Las Vegas. What advice would you give to travelers who are considering visiting Ukraine? What to prepare them for?
Yes, cultural shocks. So be ready in a mindset of a pretty significant cultural difference, and then just be ready to enjoy it. And then I would also recommend, there's a lot of really good churches there, and so if you look at it, I think the last numbers I heard, one of the main bishops in the country is a good friend of mine. I think the last number he gave me was like 3,500 churches in Ukraine. Keep in mind, Ukraine's about the size of Texas.
Yes,
and so that's a lot of churches.
that is a lot.
I would recommend getting tied in with the church, because then you'll get a really cool, genuine experience. Because like we talked about, if you meet the wrong people, you will have I think it's in any country. So as early as you can, find a local friend and then let that local friend give you the real, genuine experience.
What about languages? Do you need to know a little bit of Ukrainian language before you travel there?
I would say for sure, any country you go, especially Ukraine, know the basics. Hello, goodbye, please, and thank you. That's 4 words. Anyone can memorize 4 words.
Do people in Ukraine speak English?
Some of them do. A lot of the younger generation have started learning English, but it's far and few.
Usually in this podcast, I ask my guests to teach me a little bit of their language.
Yes.
Which in that case, we both speak Russian.
Yes, but I can teach you Ukrainian.
Yes, Ukrainian. So I actually have some Ukrainian friends here, and they taught me how to say, it's not dobrze, it's sure.
We can step it up a little. Let me teach you some real Ukrainian.
Yes, yeah. So teach me like a Ukrainian proverb, something like difficult for me to pronounce, because we have a similar dialect.
Let's try вітаю.
Вітаю.
Yeah,
вітаю.
that's like greetings.
Вітаю. Вітаю is like здравствуйте.
Yes.
Вітаю.
Yes.
So it's like hello.
Yes. Another one is цікаво.
Цікаво?
Yeah. It's like interesting.
Oh, okay. So цікаво, вітаю, цікаво. And then how to say American dream?
Американська, or we say США мета.
Мета. Oh, okay. So it's similar to Russian language. Мечта, мета. Американская. Американская. Американская
we don't
мета.
say we say США.
США. Yes, USA.
Yeah.
Perfect. I'm ready to go to Ukraine. That's it.
I love the Ukrainian language. So I started really learning the Ukrainian language right around college. And so it sounds so much more rich. And so I can say like, Привет, как дела? And it's like it seems very like harsh and straightforward. Or I can say, Вітаю. Jak ty себе відчуваєш?
It sounds French.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, like bonjour.
Yes, bonjour.
Yeah, it's like як ти себе відчуваєш, how are you feeling?
It's softer than Russian language
Yeah.
for sure. I can hear that. And I do think that Ukrainian language is super pretty. When my friends speak Ukrainian to each other, and to me it sounds like I'm drunk and like they speak my language but I can't understand what they're saying because a lot of like dialect and words are still the same.
Right.
And I can understand that they're saying, like my stomach hurts or something like that. But I'm like, I don't know why exactly their stomach
it has more
hurts.
flow. That's why I like it. Kind of like
Yes.
English is like almost pauses in between words versus when you speak in Spanish, it flows.
Yes.
That's how I feel like Russian, Ukrainian is. Russian's like more like American, like blunt versus Ukrainian. It kind of flows into like almost like a song.
But it's very hard to learn for Americans.
I think so. I think it's one of the hardest languages in the world,
Yes.
if I remember correctly.
Americans think that English is.
No.
Has anyone said that to you?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're like, English is the hardest one in the world.
English is not hard. It's hard to learn the dialect here. I had a friend that I went to college with from Africa, and he learned and studied English in Rwanda. He came here, 37 years old, master student, getting his doctorates. Didn't understand people speaking it.
Well, howdy and what's up?
Right,
When people ask me that question too, I was like, what do you mean what's up? Ceiling.
I hear you.
So before we step into a break, finally, what personal experiences or memories of traveling to Ukraine you cherish the most and why?
Yeah, I think the one I cherish the most is visiting the churches there. And because whenever I visit the church, it's like going back in time 20 years and being home. Because not only do I get to experience the original kind of Slavic Ukrainian faith in regards to like long prayers, long church services, like everything is super long. Like it's normal to have like a 4-hour service instead of here you get like a fast food version, 45 minutes in and out, let's go back to work. And on top of that, I get to experience the food, the hospitality. So we have like a non-for-profit and we support like widows, orphanages, families with a lot of kids. And whenever we visit these churches, we get hosted. And so hosting is a big thing. And whenever we get hosted, we experience the language, the deep connection, the food, and just the whole culture all in one. And so that's probably my most memorable moments is visiting these churches all across the country.
Welcome back. You're listening to the American Dream podcast. I'm here with a guest from Ukraine, Pavel. In this half of the podcast, I usually put my laptop away because it's my favorite half and I get to see cool items that remind my guest of their homeland, which in your case, it's Ukraine. And you already shared with me a little bit about food, beautiful clothes, beautiful culture of your homeland. And I am interested to see what items remind you of home so much.
Yeah, so the items that I brought today that you'll put on the screen that are super amazing.
That you did not brought today.
Oh, funny story. I'll tell you after.
No, just tell me.
Okay.
Just tell me the funny story.
My EA is actually from, her mom's Ukrainian, but she's from Russia. She finished her Juris Doctorate, so attorney from Moscow. And so, that's a pretty cool thing. So I have to, and so she understands both my employees and my people, because I employ a lot of Slavic people. And me as well, because I'm still, I would say, pretty multicultural.
Wow. And
so,
she speaks 3 languages?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And so the things that to this day, and one of the reasons why I have, multicultural people in my life today, whether it's employees or friends, is because for items. And one of those things is coffee.
Of course.
So Ukrainian coffee, I think, is unlike any in this world.
And with your lifestyle, too. You can't live without it, it sounds like.
Yeah, I do about 3 cups a day right now. I'm trying to dial it down to 2.
3 cups? How does it, not hurt your stomach?
Well, I work 100-hour shifts a week, and then
oh my God.
I eat very healthy, and so I cater a lot of food, and it's all super healthy, so it's a good balance. And then I drink 2 water bottles per cup of coffee. So that's the trick.
Okay.
You want to drink 1 water bottle before you drink a coffee and 1 water bottle after, whether it's Ukrainian, American, or Colombian coffee. So that's what I would recommend.
Okay. So it's Ukrainian coffee.
Yes.
Is there a
Ukrainian.
specific brand of it that you really like?
I think all of them. There's one that I like. It comes from Lviv. They actually, I forget the name of it in English, but the way they do the beans, they actually roast the beans there in Lviv on the strip, and so it's like some of the best coffee I've ever had in my life.
What?
Yeah.
I never knew that about Ukraine. That's so awesome. What is this, Brazil?
So then the second item is chocolate, and same thing there on the strip in Lviv.
Yes.
There's a world famous chocolate factory. And so it's some of the most rich and pure chocolate. And the cool thing is, it's not, this is what Ukrainians are cool for. It's like, Russian, and there's 6 ways to say every Russian word ever.
Of course, yes.
In Ukrainian, I feel like food is that way. And so same with chocolate. You got like the fudge and the soft chocolates, and then the hard chocolates, and then you got the cocoa chocolates that just make your mouth dry out because it's so rich, and you have to like drink it with tea or with coffee or with milk. And so there's a wide spectrum of really delicious chocolates. And they don't stop there. They make chocolate and art. And so you have like these dolls and these like animals and houses all made out of chocolate, and they all do it by hand carved, all these different cool things out of chocolate.
Wow.
And
well,
so,
I know that we make like little Santa Clauses from chocolate for
and
New
then
Year's.
the babushki as well.
Yes. Absolutely. The little like bunny rabbits or something too, as a symbol of like Chinese New Year too.
Yes. So it's like, I hope I don't regret saying this, but it's like eating art.
Yes.
It's like so rich. Like you get to, I guess I should reword that. It's a taste of art.
Oh, that's a very poetic way to say that. That's beautiful.
I'm working on being politically correct, not to get myself in trouble.
Yes. Do you go to European market here locally, or
yes.
Where do you get your food here?
So there's 2 stores. There's one, I don't remember what it's called, which is really bad, that my wife goes to most often. It's on Kansas Expressway. The one I go to is on East Sunshine. East Sunshine is called European Market.
Yeah. Yes, of course. Shout out to them. I love them.
Ice cream, dumplings,
Cakes.
sausage, cakes. Yeah,
yes.
That's where you'll find me on a Saturday.
Yes, same. We never run into each other there,
I'm sure we will now.
There's one also on Republic Road.
Yes,
Old
my
Town.
mom goes there.
Old Town. So there's a third one on Kansas
there's
Expressway?
I think 4 of them now.
4?
Yes, and rumor has it someone's opening one in Ozark as well.
What?
Yeah.
That's my dream come true. I hope they're gonna like bake cakes too, because I really miss like people who bake cakes here, like honey cake.
Well,
and
there's funny you say
Kievsky.
that. Kievsky tort is amazing. There's a Viber group chat and there's a Facebook group chat, and there's a lot of immigrants and refugees here right now, and they cook, bake. There's one for pastries, and it's amazing. Like you can order any Ukrainian
I
pastry
think I
you
saw
want.
that, and it was very colorful. And
Yes.
people are super talented who move here
Yes.
with their degree in background and culinary. It just looks like a piece of art once again.
Yeah,
it looks fake.
It's a taste of art. It's a taste of art.
Yes. So it's chocolate, it's coffee. What is the last thing?
So the last thing, it'd have to be clothing. And so I'll show you a piece of clothing. It's a shirt, and they hand stitch like different designs on it. And so it's just stunning. It's artwork. So you got a taste of art, a drink of art, and then you can wear art.
Perfect. Yes.
And so their clothing is very, very authentic, very Ukrainian. And the cool thing is, so it's like a dress shirt, but the buttons only come down like 3 or 4 buttons.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
And then
yes.
the chest area down to like here is all hand stitched.
Wyshivanka.
Yeah. And so it's all hand stitched, and you can do flowers, mountains. The Ukrainian symbol is my favorite, and there's just so many cool things. And then to top it all off, you have like 2 little strings with like the graduation stencil that goes over.
Yes.
It's like 2 graduation stencils that come down from the collar.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, see, this is why I wore this sweater. Because
Is that the most Slavic thing you can find?
Yes. With a little bit of flowers, with
Yes.
something white over
Yes.
here. Is that what you recommend for people from America to bring from Ukraine with them?
Oh, yeah, most definitely. The chocolate might melt, so if you do chocolate, get like a higher grade cocoa to where it's more of a dry chocolate. And then coffee is pretty easy to bring, but clothing for sure.
Yes.
Because then, like here in Springfield, we have like a Slavic festival. We have different like parades and meetings and gatherings and holidays that are pretty well celebrated here in our region. And so you could wear that and you could go out there and be like, oh, Ukrainian.
Yes. And you can look like that too, with a little bit of flowers on your chest.
And the next time we do a podcast part 2,
yes.
you could wear it.
Yes. Yes, I need to find one and make it first. But thank you so much for visiting me today. Seriously, the conversation we had was super motivational and educational
Thank
too.
You. I really enjoyed
it. Appreciate your time and everything you told me about Ukraine. It feels like I literally just traveled there.
That's amazing. That's the goal. Hopefully this war comes to an end and you could take a trip there. And I really look forward to doing a trip as well.
Thanks for tuning in to the American Dream Podcast. For more episodes, subscribe on your favorite platform. Keep dreaming and see you next time.